tallest tree in the world?
David?
Tallest tree...
David?
The tallest tree in the world is the
Howard Libby Coast Redwood in California at 362 feet.
Oh, you knew all the time.
Of course I knew, David. I really don't know why you bother with all those old-fashioned books.
I'm doing research. You see, I've got to be in full control of all the facts when my special visitor arrives. Brian Holmes, he's 13 years old, wrote me this letter, and he wants to be a naturalist, and he's coming up to see me to get a few tips.
What's more, he comes from right in the middle of the East End of London, Millwall, on the Isle of Dogs. It looks very different from the countryside round here, David.
He's an East Ender, and when he said could he come up here and pick my brains about being a naturalist, of course I said, naturally. It must have been quite a shock for young Brian when he finally arrived at his destination. There are no traffic jams and tower blocks on the hills around Hampstead Forest where I live. So I decided to take Brian straight off to meet the man who knows more about nature in this bit of the countryside than anyone else I know. Brian Walker, Forest Excursion Ranger, meet Brian Holmes. Now, he's a budding naturalist from London. Here, Brian, you remember that bog you told me about? I'm going to nip down and look at it. I'll leave you to get on. See you later.
Cheerio now.
What are you doing?
Okay, well this is a pitfall trap, and you can see we've had it actually buried in the ground, this plastic cup, and there are leaves and things that have fallen in, blown in by the wind. But the idea is we want to try and catch some insects if we can, because it's very important in the forest that we understand all the things that live here, not just the birds and the large animals, but the insects as well. And we have to trap the insects, unfortunately, and kill them, because there are so few experts. You know, what we will do is collect these samples up and send them away to a university, and people will be able to study these from very complicated books and give us a picture of what the insect life is like on the forest floor.
Well, I'll write something down, because I've never known about them around the forest before. What else you got to show me?
Well, over there's something in the wood that's really interesting. I'll put this pot down. We might catch some more in there. Come on, just over here. Don't trip on these branches. Actually, this is one of the highest beech woods in England. We're up to about 350 metres here.
That's interesting. How did you become a forest ranger anyway?
Well, I started off like you, just by being interested in natural history and looking at the things around me in the countryside.
Do you have to become a naturalist first to become a forest ranger?
Well, being a naturalist is not the sort of job you can go into a job centre and get. Really, if you want to be a professional naturalist, you've got to be out in the countryside looking for things yourself, but you've also perhaps got to go to university and get a degree so that you've got the qualifications and experience to look through a microscope, for instance, things like that. You need that technical knowledge. But the main part of it is being out in the countryside, looking and seeing and observing and writing down, like you were before, making notes. And that's vitally important. That's something that everybody who goes into the countryside can do. Anyway, there's something up here we ought to go and have a look at, so we'll go along there and see what there is, okay? See how these fungi are forcing the bark off this tree here? That's really quite unusual, that.
I didn't know that fungi would be so strong. I thought it was all just soft and grew out the side.
Well, this fungi is strong enough to kill this tree. And actually, this fungus is called oyster fungus.
Oh yeah, you can tell by the shape.
That's right, sort of oyster shape.
Do they just settle on certain trees?
If the conditions are right, yes, perhaps this tree's had an injury, perhaps a branch fell off it, or perhaps it's been struck by lightning or something like that. Just like a wound on a person, somebody cuts themselves, you can get an infection. This tree's the same. Right, we'll go over here now, and there's a woodpecker hole just up here in the wood. Well, here we are, up in that tree just up there.
Are there any in now? Any woodpeckers?
Not at this time of year, because woodpeckers excavate the hole really to nest in. They might use it in bad weather to roost in, if it was very, very cold and snowy and blowy and so on. But once they've used that hole, they'll not really want to use it again.
Where would they be now then?
Actually, at this time of day, they'll probably be searching around for insects and so on under bark. or even down on the ground.
Yeah, Brian, you do work in a fascinating place. I only got about 20 yards and look what I found.
It looks like a dicranum to
Yeah.
me.
You can tell it's a dicranum's a moss with that rather curved leaf, but which one? I reckon it could be, what, Bongiane or something like that.
It could be, but we need it under a microscope.
Microscope.
Really, to do that.
We'll take it back. Work, me boy. Off we
Right.
go.
Cheerio.
Cheerio. Interesting bloke, Brian Walker. Knows all about the wildlife of the forest. Anyway, let's get back to the study and get the microscope out. Then we'll see how good a naturalist you are when we look at the moss fully magnified. A microscope is a marvellous thing, and it's an absolute must if you're going to become a real natural historian. I've lent Brian my big one, and I'm using one all just like the sort you could have at home. Have you got a cold or something?
Aren't you going to introduce us, David?
You know who he is? No, she's quite right. You know, politeness, everything. Brian, meet Alice.
How'd you do, Alice?
Oh, very well, thank you, Brian.
Fabulous computer. How clever is she?
Why don't you ask her something?
What's the world's tallest tree?
Even I know that. It's the Howard Libby Coast Redwood in California. And, you know, it's 362 feet tall.
Well, if you're so clever, why do you need a computer?
Ask him to name the second tallest.
How about my microscope?
David.
Well, yeah, I'll come clean. Actually, I did a bit of swatting before you came, so I knew the answer to that one.
Yes, well, the second tallest tree is in Washington and it's 278 feet high. The third is in California and it's 272 feet high. And Britain's tallest tree is in Wales at Grand Fir, 185 feet high.
Pretty good.
Yes, well, back to the microscope. Now, which of the mosses do you think it was we found in the forest?
That one.
Yeah, I must agree with you. Not a rarity at all, quite a common one. But isn't it nice to see it magnified in that way? You know, and a microscope really makes everything you look at quite wonderful. Increasing the magnification takes you deeper and deeper into your subject. Moss leaves with long cells, wonderful plant hairs. Everything you look at becomes an amazing sight under the lens of a microscope. And I'll bet you didn't know that all this was going on in the water from your vase of flowers. Tear yourself away from the microscopic world. I'm going to put you to the test. Now, here's a drawing of all the things I've seen living in and around St Paul's Cathedral. Bet you don't know what that is.
It's easy, that's Lunaria. I can tell that because of the shape of the cups around the sides.
Just like your moon. My goodness, you do know a lot.
I'm even writing a book about it.
A book? Let's look. Goodness, you've been working hard. Here, that gives me an idea. Why don't we write a leaflet together about the wildlife in our towns? Well, what have we got to put in the leaflet?
Well, we've got kestrels, insects. What about the foxes? Definitely foxes in London.
You're absolutely right. We'll put them in the leaflet. And when we've finished, all you budding naturalists out there can write in and get a copy. Alice, the address, please.
Now, write to me at Bellamy's Bugle, Box 333, Leeds LS3 1JD. That's the address for your copy of David and Brian's free leaflet on city wildlife.
And Brian, to commemorate your visit, Alice and me would like you to have this microscope.
Thanks a lot.